So, I mean, think about it this way. And a lot of people in the finance world pretty much know this. The economic collapse is basically an inevitability at this point, like a mathematical inevitability. The question is just like when it's going to collapse. And so obviously the people in power know that, and they want to manage that collapse to, herd people into CBDCs. At least we can see that whole picture now. Maybe a couple of years ago that wasn't so obvious, but now it's pretty obvious. So they want to manage the collapse in such a way where they can do that, right? So part of this is how are they going to bring it all down but absolve themselves of blame? They don't want to repeat 2008 where there was Occupy Wall Street and civil unrest against the banks. They want to have another boogeyman.
Welcome back to Money 101. It's not a question of if, but when. Investigative journalist Whitney Webb asserts that an economic collapse is an inevitable mathematical outcome at this juncture. Webb highlights a stark reality. The United States debt burden has skyrocketed to unsustainable levels. The incessant printing of money by the government and central banks has led to a situation where they struggle to meet the interest payments on the mounting debt, prompting them to print even more money. This sets the stage for a perilous debt spiral that is bound to unravel in the future. According to Webb, major banks are already aware of this impending catastrophe and have commenced preparations for the inevitable collapse. Their strategy involves shifting the blame onto a scapegoat, potentially attributing the crisis to international hackers, or a cyber catastrophe that could unfold in 2024. Stay tuned until the end of the video where Whitney Webb explores whether Bitcoin could serve as a plausible solution to the looming economic crisis. Also, a reminder to our viewers, if you appreciate finance-related content, consider subscribing. It's a free subscription, and you can always change your mind. Now let's hear Whitney Webb's insights on why, given a long enough timeline, an economic collapse becomes a mathematical certainty.
They have a game plan for this. We don't know it because it's part of this, they're like information, I forget the acronym, but all these different sectors in the US, they're called ISACs, that's it. Okay, so it's like an information sharing and analysis center by all the big players in a particular industry. So the financial industry, Wall Street has an ISAC. I forget exactly what it's called, but I talk about it. And they work with the WEF, and they have a plan that they've done at the ISAC, which is like a meeting of the biggest banks and financial products companies and asset company, whatever, in the world, or in the US, sorry. So they all have a private communication platform where they all get together and talk about stuff. And so they have a contingency plan about what to do in the event of a cyber attack that takes down the financial system. Okay, so they know what they're going to do. We just don't know. So it's a mess. But anyway, the end game of the WEF partnership against cybercrime, it's not just this financial transition. It's more broadly focused on the end of online anonymity and privacy entirely. So you have the cyber attack, right? Probably going to usher in a CBDC thing, something like that. And this partnership against cybercrime is intimately involved in all of these preparations. But another thing that these people want is to have what was dreamt up under the Obama administration. It never was put into practice, but it was called a driver's license for the internet, is what they referred to it. And similar ideas have been piloted by the UK and the EU. The idea that you have to, in order to access they started with to access social media. That's what they're doing in the EU and the UK. To access social media, you have to link your government ID or government issued ID to your account. And they say this is going to stop hate speech or stop illegal financial activity online and all of this stuff.
They're going to suppress free speech. But they know what voters are say.
Yeah, but if you look at, policy papers talking about the WEF again, but, other organizations have partnered with them on this. The digital ID agenda, which vaccine passports were sort of a Trojan horse for. They want to tie your CBDCs to that. They want to tie your medical history to that, your ability to travel, all of this stuff. But, they say in that document, digital IDs are about deciding what you do and do not have access to, but also, we saw this with vaccine passports, where you can travel, where you can't travel, right? You can't go, right? What services you can receive, which ones you can't. But it's also what information you can and can't access. I mean, they say it really openly there. So the idea is to have it, they even have a graphic of it, in this 2018 policy paper that, tie it to your social media accounts, the ID, and also tie it to your internet access and your phone access, period. So the idea is to usher in the system, and if you can't live without your phone or you can't live without the internet, you're going to get it. You're going to join the slave system because they're going to make it the only way you can get online. But I mean, at that point, the internet, just so people know, if you're thinking, well, yeah, maybe I should then because I can't live without online, whatever. Yeah, okay. The internet won't be fun once they do that. Like everything that's fun about the internet will go away. Just want to be really clear about that. But they claim this is the only way to move forward. Again, the partnership against cybercrime, which the FBI and DOJ are part of, I will have you know, basically say that it's the only way to stop cybercrime is to make everyone have to be completely trackable, everything they do, and it's surveilled in real time online and, you know, in privacy and anonymity and surveil everyone. And the U.S. government they've launched it already. It was going to be launched under Trump. It was like Ivanka and Kushner's project, that they were pitching to Trump called HARPA, which is the health DARPA. But now Biden has launched it under a slightly different name, ARPA H. He moved the H to the end, but it's still Health ARPA. And that program, as originally designed, was to go through all your social media and online data to determine early warning signs of neuropsychiatric violence, that one day you could become violent, which, you know, is pre-crime, basically.
Oh, yeah.
And so if it's tied to your ID and it comes up, beep, 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 this person could be violent, you know, it's your ID, they know where you live, they can turn off your money with CBDCs, they can do it all. That's what we're moving into. It's totally mental. So, yeah. Okay, so they've been talking about cyber attack on the energy grids and all this stuff in the media for a while, and cybersecurity companies, many of which are tied to intelligence, have been talking about that for a while too. But if you want to look at people like the World Economic Forum and their partners, they talk about cyber attacks too, but it's almost entirely focused on the financial system. And some of the biggest banks in the world are part of that. And it's basically, you know, they have a plan. We don't know what it is, but they have a plan for what happens if there is a cyber attack on the financial system, and how all the big banks are going to respond with the government, because this is basically the biggest banks in the world, and it's the UK government, Israel's government, and the US government, including the FBI and Department of Justice, all part of this thing. It's called Partnership Against Cybercrime at the World Economic Forum, and I've written about it pretty extensively. If you go to my website and you look up like WEF, Partnership Against Cybercrime, you'll find my two-part series on all this stuff, because a lot of people probably heard about Cyber Polygon, which is like the WEF's big simulation for a cyber attack, but that's like an annual exercise. So they've done several of those, but then again, it's mainly again with banks. So it's co-hosted by a subsidiary of Sberbank, which is one of Russia's biggest bank, partially state-owned, which is kind of ironic when you consider Russian hackers, you know, and all the concern about that. And, you know, the U.S. government's participating in Cyber Polygon, for example. Like, why aren't they concerned about Russian hackers then? I mean, it's just it's a joke. So anyway, it's mostly bank.
Here's Whitney Webb shedding light on the imminent threat of an economic collapse. It's not a hypothetical scenario. It's a genuine and looming danger driven by the escalating debt spiral and unchecked monetary policies. Whitney's analysis vividly illustrates a system on the edge, propelled by financially unsustainable practices and the looming specter of a deliberately orchestrated crisis. Her insights serve as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of our current economic structure, with major banks making strategic preparations for the inevitable downturn. Whitney's perspective on potential scapegoats and manufactured crises urges us to stay vigilant and critically assess the narratives presented during these turbulent times. Amidst these revelations, the question arises, could Bitcoin be a potential refuge in the storm of economic uncertainty? Whitney's viewpoint on this digital asset introduces a new dimension to consider in our strategies for personal finance and wealth preservation. Anyway, I hope today's video provided valuable insights, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. As always, take care.